Morning. Well, another day, another front page on the WhatsApp leaks. How much more have you got in the tank on this? I mean, how many more are we going to see?
Well, we'll keep going while the story merits it. Today's front page is about a guy called James Daly, with the most marginal seat in the country for a Tory MP in Bury. It turns out he was threatened with removing funding for a new disabled children's centre if he didn't back plans for the government's approach on the lockdowns, and it's caused a major row already, with the former party chairman Jake Berry saying that Matt Hancock should be summoned to the bar of the House to apologise. I mean, real concerns here, and we go back to last year when William Wragg, a Tory MP, complained about bullying by MPs and withdrawing of public funding. Well, here's an example in clear terms on WhatsApp. Although the threat was never taken place, it never actually happened. It shows what happens behind the scenes.
Well, let me quote it. It's a WhatsApp message from Alan Nixon, who, of course, is an aide to Matt Hancock. I'll just cut to the chase here. He's talking about putting pressure on MPs who are threatening to rebel over lockdown, and he says, e.g., James, this is the MP you mentioned, James wants his learning disability hub in Bury. Well, whips call him up and say, health team want to work with you to deliver this, but that'll be off the table if you rebel. I mean, it's naked Chief Whip stuff, isn't it?
It's unbelievable. We do hear about these threats behind the scenes, but to see it in such clear terms on WhatsApp, make clear why this guy William Wragg, who is concerned about this issue, a whistleblowing Tory MP, actually considered going to the police last year about these threats. That's why he's worried. It's quite mucky, isn't it? And it shows how, at the heart of it, much of the lockdown approach was political as much as following the science.
Chris, I want to ask you about this remarkable set of exchanges about the fact that the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, plans to bring French COVID patients to the UK for treatment during the second wave of the pandemic. We were all told that the reason we were locking down was to protect the NHS from being overwhelmed. How come we had the capacity to consider bringing patients in from France? I mean, there were travel restrictions in place. Look, there was almost, I would say, 100% adherence to lockdown rules during this time, apart from in the government, right, and the civil servants, where they seem to not take it seriously. Exactly. But what is being revealed in the Daily Telegraph is that some of the reasons that we locked down now don't seem to even hold up themselves. What was this?
Well, this was about back in November 2020, a long time ago, and much has happened since then. There was more cases in the north of England than there were in the south. There was capacity in the south, and it looks like Ed Llewellyn, the former gatekeeper to David Cameron, got in touch. He was the ambassador for the UK in France at the time, and said, well, we're not sure what he said, but the result appears to be an offer from Matt Hancock to France to say, if you want more space, more beds, we have some space here. I mean, we don't know if Matt Hancock was freelancing here, whether he had delusions of grandeur as a world statesman. We don't know what's going on. He suddenly gave the offer to France, looked at the offer to France, but it did appear to go nowhere. But it does show how, while we had been told to be locked down, we were told there's no space, that there's huge capacity issues with the NHS. Nightingale hospitals were getting up and running. There was also this offer to France. It looks strange. What
for you so far? I mean, we're a couple of weeks into this front page story in the Telegraph. What for you has been the biggest story, the biggest shock?
Well, I've been really surprised by the way that some of these rules have been so arbitrarily decided. For example, the rule of six, which forced families with many number of children to be shut down completely, couldn't see anybody, was carried on despite concerns from other ministers. Maybe Helen Whately has emerged quite well from this, I think, despite some of her public appearances at the time. Internally, she had a finger on the pulse of what it was like for families. I think that's quite interesting, the way some measures on secondary school mask wearing was pushed forward because of concerns about Nicola Sturgeon, as much as the children, many of my children, for example, affected by that. I mean, I think the way, I appreciate it was a real-time pandemic. No one's seen it before. But by the time it bedded in after a year or so, often some of the choices were made as much as political battling between often male politicians as much as a reason to do it.
Well, it's interesting you say that. For me, I have to say, having followed this really closely since you broke this story a couple of weeks ago, it's the overall sense of the contempt with which the government treated the public. The story that broke at the weekend about Hancock saying he wanted to scare the pants off us in order to get people to comply. It's to me, the biggest worry of all of this is the fragility of our democracy and how these people were behaving like tin pot dictators at times.
Well, Richard, yeah, of course you're right. But of course, these are, I mean, let's be fair to them. These are WhatsApp messages. I wouldn't want to see your messages, Richard, about what you're saying about friends or family or work colleagues, or what I'm saying about them. I mean, you are often, you're very frank in messages you wouldn't want to see published. But it does suggest that. I mean, I think we haven't yet seen a political casualty yet from this scandal, but these revelations. I think Simon Case, the Cabinet Secretary, is in a bit of trouble. The FT reports today how he's a bit generally undecided about whether to carry on with the civil service to the election next year or go earlier. That's no surprise, really, because some of the things he's been saying in these messages are difficult. He described Boris Johnson as a distrusted figure. Now, plenty might agree with that, but if you're the head of the civil service, you can't really say that about another figure who might run the country one day and might come back again, of course. He also talked about the issue of pure conservative ideology when there were some concerns about Tories, mainly on the right, about COVID rules. I think he is under some pressure right now in government.
OK. What's your takeaway, guys, very briefly, on the whole story?
I'd forgotten just how much power the government took, and with very little discussion with the Cabinet, very little discussion with Parliament, and how behind the scenes it looked like it was they were rather revelling in it, I'm afraid.
Yeah. If Matt Hancock was still Health Secretary,
he wouldn't be
his
now.
Job now.
He wouldn't be now.
Out for this. But that the threat to withdraw funding from a constituency, I'm afraid that goes on all the time, and it's gone on in the Labour years as well as the Tory years. Christian Wakeford, Bury MP, now Labour, defected from the Conservatives, said when he was going to vote to give free school meals, Marcus Rashford going to vote to give free school meals to kids in hungry kids in holidays, and Gavin Williamson, Education Secretary at the time, threatened to cut funding for a Bury school. It's a dirty side of politics.
That's the way that politics works, isn't it?
It's dirty.
I think there will be a lot of doctors and nurses and people working in the NHS who will be absolutely shocked that there was any suggestion that
bringing people in from
COVID patients from another country could be brought in when they were under the cosh.
And we couldn't travel. We couldn't see people.
No.
Couldn't leave our bubbles.
No.
Potty, basically, wasn't it? I mean,
Chris Hope from The Telegraph, thank you very much for your time this morning. We will continue to observe your front pages as long as they keep coming like this. Fascinating stuff. Thank you.